Okay, everybody, we are live with pre-chat, so let me know if you can see and hear me. This is Friday, May 19th, 2017. Say hello to everybody that's in the chat room so far. We have Mate 87 in Tartu, Estonia, Eudemonist, Blake Cosmos, Chime, Harvey's Barn, KY Brown, Busy Dealer, Leon, who is in the Netherlands but moving to Singapore. Congratulations, Leon. And Dana in Italy. Oh, by the way, guys, Dana has a really interesting comment on the news and views about what's going on domestically in Italy. So go read that. Very interesting. Kind of sounds to me like Loge Propaganda Due lives. So anyway, the other thing, guys, we are having severe weather where I am. So if I should suddenly get up and run away and forget to stop the camera, it's because they're blowing the sirens. I'm having to keep one eye on the radar. If I should just suddenly disappear and not return, it's because we're having a power outage. So that's to you, and if that should happen and you stick around in the chat room, please let everybody else know that may come late, because the weather, what can I say? It's dodgy today. So anyway, we have not too many questions today, which suits me fine. My voice could use a rest. But we have some really interesting questions. Quantity is not always necessarily quality. we definitely have some quality questions and comments today. Katie Ball sent a whopper doozy. So wait till you hear that. Trying to think what else. Yes, no tornadoes, please. I agree, you demonist. Last night we had a storm here that was an electrical display like like I've never seen. It would have done Tesla proud. Let's put it that way. Dana, we did not have. That's very interesting that you say that about Tesla towers repelling tornadoes. We did not have tornadoes, but we had electrical storms, just unbelievable electrical storms. You can hear the thunder now, guys. So yeah, the weather is, there was a break, but it is supposedly moving back in. So again, guys, if I suddenly disappear or get up and run, that may be the signal that our vid chat for today is maybe iffy. Tesla's talking to me. I hope he's not talking to me, you know. It's one of those days. Byzantra is in the chat room. Welcome to Byzantra from Belgium. So anyway, keep your fingers crossed that my voice holds out. Ever since that bout, it has been dodgy. I have not been talking as much. I have not been smoking as much either since then, because my throat was so very sore. By the way, Daniel and I did a new dialogue. It's in the members area, a very interesting one. You know, I don't tell Daniel what to do, and he came up with something really kind of caught me by surprise. We had a long talk about science fiction and things going on in the world. How do I feel? I'm better, but I had to have antibiotics, very heavy antibiotics, and they have just kind of ruined my system. So if you see me get up and run away, there may be other causes for it. Try a hookah. No, I don't. I haven't had a hookah in a long time. Um, I'm trying to give just a rest from the smoke. I've been smoking my pipe more than cigarettes since then, and I left my pipe in the other room. I don't even know where it is. So anyway, uh, Eudemonist says she loved the new dialogue. It was kind of a fun one. Oh, pardon me. Ah, got up too early this morning, guys. Welcome to Steve Heppel in the United Kingdom, if I remember correctly. Yeah, antibiotics were just, yeah, I've been taking probiotics, but like I say, it just so ruined me that um, it's going to be a while. And I have been eating yogurt and all of that, wonderful healthy stuff that I can't stand. Anyway, welcome to Winston in the chat room as well. So anyway, it's going to be interesting. Let's put it that way. Oh, Steve Heppel's in the USSA. I'm sorry. United Soviet States of America. Thank you, California. Or as I like to call it, Nuttyfornia. Sorry, I had to pull my earphones off to see if it was if the rain had started up again. Is there a common thread in the questions this week? No. It's one of those all over the board weeks here, guys. So there's no theme. And fortunately, if the questions stay at the amount that they are today, guess what? We might be taking questions directly from the chat room, which has been a long time since we've done that. RB44 is in the chat room. Welcome to RB. I forget where you're from, RB. Give me a reminder. Anyway, we're all over the board. Katie Ball has given us a whopper doozy of a question. Welcome to Jeannie. Yeah, I've been thinking, Leon, about doing an all chat room question sometime. Oh, that's right. RB is in the USSA. And Lady Dashwood in the chat room. Welcome. I met Lady Dashwood in Louisville last weekend. Did anybody see the article about the plane that went down in the Bermuda Triangle with a German pilot, a pretty young woman who arranges parties for the elite in remote and strange locations, and her two small sons? I haven't seen that, but I haven't had chance yet, Lady Dashwood, to visit very much my email folder, which has piled up with emails since Louisville. I've barely managed to catch up yesterday. Anyway, Jeannie is in Reno, biggest little city in the world. I've always liked Reno. I prefer Reno to Las Vegas, actually. Anyway, got to refresh my user window here, guys, because as usual, it's just not doing that for me automatically. So give me a few seconds here as it refreshes. If the submissions stay what they are, will we take questions from the chat? Yes, I will. And welcome, Geiger. uh, Jeannie says the greater Reno area is being developed like you wouldn't believe. I would believe it, actually. Holy cow, Roger Ailes died? I didn't know that. Is that a veiled way of saying if Geiger doesn't send me anything? No, it's not Geiger. Good try. No, we haven't had a chat where I've taken predominantly questions from the chat room since Daniel and I began this website about 9 years ago. So it's been about that long. I mean, I've taken questions from the chat, when we get done, a few here and there, but as a predominant, it's been that long. But hey, that's okay. That's any way we get it done, we get it done. Busy Dealer says it's too bad Reno's growing. The size was what she always liked about Reno. Yeah, I'm the same way, Busy Dealer. I always liked the size of Reno compared to Vegas and its ease of getting around. You have all the big stuff like you had in Vegas, just on a smaller scale. Jeannie says that's why we're moving. Okay. Geiger says, I didn't have any good ones come to mind this week, so maybe something will spark me. Are you okay, Geiger? Are you sick? Dang. Blake Cosmos says, Chicago is shrinking. I wonder why. Well, I could offer things on that score, Blake, about, when your city starts to resemble Nuttyfornia with a certain group of people that have been running it for so long. Maybe that's a reason why. But Eudemonist says the same thing is happening in Austin. Yep, I know. That's the problem. All of the nuts that have run every other place down have decided they've had enough, so they're going to move and run even more places down. So anyway, Blake Cosmos says they're making room in Chicago for another circle of hell. Listen, I drove over to Louisville with a friend of mine that lives in Chicago, and he is so desperate to get out of there. I can't blame him. Leon says that's the reason he's moving to Singapore. The social justice warrior crowd has no foothold there, and good for them. Leon, if I could afford to leave this country, I would. I just can't afford it. It's going to go down the tubes because a certain group whose political affiliation shall remain nameless is not going to be satisfied until it has wrecked everything. Geiger is saying, I did have this thought, what if people that are colorblind actually live in one dimension but perceive another, one with tweaked colors? Maybe, but I've never thought about that. What did my friend say about Chicago? Asked Busy Dealer. He just said it's getting very, very very, very dangerous, even in the so-called good areas. Uh, he said that he lives in a nice area that he had to take cover because there was a gunfight outside his condo window. So anyway, Santa Fe, you couldn't get me to live there for all the money in the world. I know it's a nice looking place. It's being run by the same group of people. Uh, so, I'll see you all in the FEMA camps when that particular group of people comes running to round us all up, which I don't hesitate to ascribe to them. Okay, folks, I have got to refresh my radar screen. Yep, looks like we're getting another round of rain, but it doesn't look like it's going to be that bad. Anyway, Chartreuse is in the chat room, so welcome to Chartreuse. See if I missed anybody else here. We're going to get started, by the way, guys, unless I get just a sudden flood of questions. We are going to start right at the appointed time, 2 o'clock. We don't have that many submitted questions, so we're not going to be in a big hurry today. We might be able to take questions from the chat room, provided I don't get zapped offline. Blake Cosmos says Chicago is overrun with gang violence and stupid social justice warriors. It's toxic. Yeah, that's right. And Joseph is resisting saying something here. I'm sure you can all imagine what it is. Anyway, let's see here. I'm trying to read a note I wrote to myself. I can't read my own writing. Chartreuse asks, did you see Kucinich, deep state trying to destroy the USA? No, I haven't, but my impression from reading articles that people have been sending me in the news in this country, it certainly seems that way. I like Kucinich too, but I forget what the other guy that used to be there, congressman from Ohio, a Democratic congressman from Ohio, one of the few that would tell it like it was or is. Of course, they had to get rid of him, just like they had to get rid of Congresswoman McKinney, another one that told it like it was or is. Bless her heart, she actually had to leave. She did leave the country because I think her life was in danger or threatened or something. But anyway, Kucinich was from Ohio, yes. But there was another one from Ohio. I forget what his name was. And then, of course, Congresswoman McKinney. The ones that tell the truth get run out of the party and get run out of the country, and got to have that party discipline, yeah? Comrade. Nothing like the fascism of the left, is there? McKinney was very outspoken. One of the few people paying attention to the numbers. What do you mean you've got, dear. Okay, guys, I have to go. Welcome to Eric the Swede And let us know what country you're from, Eric the Swede. Guys, I've got to go take a peek out the front door. I'm hearing weather, so I'll be right back. Okay, Eric the Swede says, I am from Sweden and at present in Västerhaninge. I hope I'm pronouncing that relatively close. Västerhaninge, I'm sorry, south of Stockholm. All right, cool. You know, it's a shame because Sweden is one of those countries I always wanted to visit. Always. And now with all of the problems, it's been moved lower on my list. Let's see here. Anyway, guys, yes, we are officially having weather out there. So Eric the Swede says, good job. Well, I wouldn't know, Eric. My exposure to Swedish can be written on the back of a postage stamp. I'm guessing on the basis of German and what I've heard of Swedish being spoken, on when I'm exposed to it. But anyway, Eric says it's a good start. I wouldn't know. Oh dear. I had to learn Swedish words because a couple of years ago I bought a book um, about Olaf Rudbeck, who is a character that always fascinated me from the University of Uppsala. And, it's the only book in English that you can get about the guy. But, which is a shame because he was very well known in Europe. He was kind of the Swedish Da Vinci and, well known to Newton and Descartes and so on, but you can't find anything in English about him other than this one little book. So I had to kind of try to learn how to pronounce Swedish. Eric says we've borrowed many words from German. I would suspect maybe it's rather the other way around. I suspect those Scandinavian languages might be as old, if not older, than German. But anyway, a cult fan is in the chat room and he says, it is hot. H-A-W-T. James Traficant, that's it. Yeah, James Traficant. Jeannie, you're right. It was James Traficant, and he back in the day when he was active, he said some things on the floor of the house that were, for that time, stunning. A cult fan says he's going to try being subtler this evening. We are all eagerly awaiting subtleness. We have no subtle questions today, guys. Everybody's going right for the jugular. Anyway, but if any of you are interested, look up that guy sometime. Do some studies of him. The Swedish Da Vinci, he was known as Olaf Rudbeck. Tall guy, and he was an Atlantis scholar, and he actually thought that Atlantis was located in Scandinavia, which sounds ridiculous and absurd when you first think of it. But he actually wrote an immensely thick book documenting why he thought that. And the book even caught the attention of Isaac Newton. And so anyway, fascinating guy. Not much about him in English. Occult Fan says multi-orgasmic man is a grand place to see a practical application, which is down to earth. Has anyone read any Gene Wolfe books? No. I haven't anyway. Geiger says, I don't subscribe to global warming, but weather has been so screwy lately. It's hotter up north than it is down here in Florida. It's weird, Geiger, because the weather has been weird here. Rudbeck. Spell it in the chat room again. Olaf Rudbeck. Swedish Da Vinci, he was called. Fascinating man. I think professor of medicine or physiology or something at the University of Uppsala. But anyway, the weather has been screwy. It has been screwy where I am. It was screwy. Just, I saw unbelievable flooding in southern Illinois. Absolutely unbelievable. I was stunned. Busy Dealer is asking, what do all of you guys think of this global warming? Is it real or not? Eudemonist says there's unusual snow around the planet. Yep. Yep. Leon says he's in the Rachel Carson camp when it comes to global warming. I don't even remember what she said. Or Randall Carson camp. I'm sorry, I misread that. Rachel Carson. Blake Cosmos says, I'm currently reading Barren Metal by E. Michael Jones in spite of my having a hard time stomaching his religious dogma. I don't know that that word. Yeah, Rachel Carson was Silent Spring. But Leon said Randall Carson. I do think that there is climate change. I'm just not convinced that it is normal aggregate human activity producing it. I do think that covert human activity coupled with some exotic technology is at least in part responsible for it. But in other words, my opinion is I have not bought into the global warming climate change meme as the elite themselves are putting it out. Anyway. Blake Cosmos says the book's title is Barren Metal, A History of Capitalism as the Conflict Between Labor and Usury. Interesting. Very interesting. Eudemonist says it's a part of natural cycles. That too, I think, is a large part of it, Eudemonist. I think they are ill understood long wave cycles that they haven't got a handle on. Cond in California, you're new. So I'm assuming you're in California, but the rule is you have to let us know what country you're in. But welcome to you. Yeah, Bearden has said that Russia has been doing weather manipulation, and I have a blog actually uh, coming up about that. Um, I think tomorrow, maybe today, maybe tomorrow. And but we're going to get started here right on time today, guys, at 2 o'clock, since we don't have that many submitted questions. Con in California says, yep, in California. Pray for me. we pray for your safety and earliest possible safe escape. There we go. I met someone else in Louisville that lived in LA and was wanting out of California just as soon as he could get out of there. Anyway, Winston also says, I'm an ex-Californian escapee. Good thought coming, good thought coming your way. Yeah, I lived there for many years too, and recently, in fact, and I'm not from California, and moving there, you know, only kind of confirmed my innate Midwestern bias against that state and other places. A cult fan says, I live in Massachusetts. Apparently this place is really bad for my energy. I was told Arizona would be good. Yeah, I can see you in Arizona, a cult fan, around Flagstaff or someplace like that. Anyway, Geiger says Florida is sane. Come on down. Well, my sister's from Florida. Or I should say not from, lives in Florida. I always liked Arizona. Not the southern part of the state, but the northern part, Flagstaff, those little towns up there, Winslow and so on. But never forget, Senator Mac Insane is from Arizona. Whatever that's worth. Got to check my radar again, guys. It might be a good thing that there are so few questions today, because with the weather going on, Flagstaff is pretty. Washington, Busy Dealer is right. Washington is also pretty, a pretty state. But anyway, for all of you trying to escape Massachusetts or Nuttyfornia, you have our very best, our very best wishes. Geiger says, you know who lives right by me is Oswald's girlfriend, Kilgallen. Maybe no, Kilgallen. You're getting Dorothy Kilgallen. Geiger was the very famous female columnist reporter back during that era that was on What's My Line, if you know that old game show. I remember Dorothy Kilgallen very well. She was quite an investigative reporter, and she was not afraid. She had a lot of guts. She was not afraid to go after just about anybody if she found out anything and could back it up. She had a big falling out with Frank Sinatra. She was one of the first to point out his mob connections. You know, she was a gutsy lady, and of course she had done some investigation into the President Kennedy assassination and ended up suicided. Supposedly she committed suicide from an overdose of barbiturates and alcohol, but she was just not the suicide type. Just not. A cult fan says Twin Peaks is coming back Sunday. Oh yeah, I remember that. They are in the process of reopening Miss Kilgallen's inquiry. If I'm correct, there was a story I blogged about a couple of weeks ago about a New York assistant district attorney doing that. But I think, you know, it's high time that they do, because her death was just not, it's just not kosher. But anyway, yeah, Twin Peaks. I imagine I'll be watching that with my friend Scott DeHart's boys. Geiger's asking Oswald's girlfriend, Judith Mary or Mary Barker or Varley or something like that. I forget. I know who you're talking about, Geiger. And yeah, it's Judith Very Baker. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, you demonist. I always get her name messed up in my head. Yeah, Judith Very Baker. But Kilgallen, no. For one thing, Dorothy Kilgallen moved in some very kind of high socialite circles. I can't see her having any sort of relationship with someone like Lee Harvey Oswald. She was a very proper socialite, let's put it that way. Speaking about the mob, what about Roger Ailes' recent death? Yeah, I don't know what to make of that, Chartreuse. That comes so quickly after they cashiered him at Fox. There's something going on there that ain't right. Maybe we're all too suspicious. Sometimes a coincidental death is just a coincidental death, but anymore with the corruption in the country and politics, I just, Yeah, Geiger is right. The district attorney investigating Dorothy Kilgallen's death is the one that made his name busting pedophiles and sex traffickers. That is right. It's either that or it's out of the same office. I forget one of the two. Harvey's Barn says Roger Ailes fell, quotation marks, guys, in his home. He was 77. And Chartreuse said he had announced earlier that he was not going to retire. He wanted his network back. Yeah, that's a big hum. Roger Ailes was the director of Fox for quite a while, Geiger. News director, I think. But yeah, something fishy there. I'm not buying it. That's, in my opinion, that's how they bumped off Father Malachi Martin, was, give him a shove down the stairs in his apartment. A cult fan says, I find Twin Peaks to be one of the most magical media out there. Does everyone recall that Cooper asked Deadshot to the audience who shot JFK, right after asking what Marilyn Monroe's relationship was to JFK? Yeah, I remember that. Con in California says, Catherine Austin Fitz says Ailes was likely forced to fall. Yeah, that's my guess. That's my guess. Winston is asking the question, so Joseph, who or what institutions would be the equivalent of the fame in this country today? The fame, if you don't know what that is, it's an abbreviation for Heilige Fame, Holy Fame. The Fame were a Star Chamber Privy Council court of the Holy Roman Emperors in the Middle Ages that had the authority to summarily try secretly and execute people that were opposed to the emperor. The Fame used those undulating daggers that are called a kris. That was one of their instruments of choice to kill people. They used other methods, but basically they were a summary justice kind of secret drumhead court type of thing. My guess, Winston, is that if there is such a thing, probably there is, insofar as the United States is concerned, it's going to come out of the National Security Council or be affiliated with it in a highly unofficial way. I would not be at all surprised if it has connections to the mafia, that its principal assassins are, mafiosi. I wouldn't be surprised that it's got connections to radical Islam for the same reasons. I would not be surprised if it had a connection to the fascist mafia, the Nazi International, or whatever you want to call it. Basically, what I'm suggesting, Winston, is it's a continuation of the old Murder Incorporated that basically does contract hits. So in other words, the Fame is not going to be under any particular government. It's just going to be a service for hire. The governments pick their people they want to off and hire the contract. Anyway, Ramura is in the chat room. Welcome to Ramura. She says she snuck in to get the Catherine Fitz link. Murder Incorporated, right. Yeah, contract hire is what I think it could be. Gives them plausible deniability. Okay, guys, I am hearing thunder. So let me refresh my radar. Yep. We are being blanketed by rain, which I don't have any problem with, as all of you probably know by now. I love rain. I just don't like severe storms, but I love steady, gentle, quiet, rolling thunder and rain. Yeah, there is information. Steve Heppel just said in the chat room some info on the Fame. It's VEHM. On the Fame is in Paul Winkler's book on Germany. Secret Germany Behind the Mask, the 1,000-Year Conspiracy. Yeah, I've noticed Catherine has been on InfoWars, and that's quite a change from where Alex was before. I'm surprised that she has been on, quite frankly. But anyway. Chartreuse says, I think Alex is becoming unglued. What do you think? She's not asking that of me, but yeah, There's something going on there. I don't know. Chartreuse kind of gives me the willies a little bit. But then again, you know, I don't blame Catherine for being on a show, because his show, you know, it reaches millions of people. The build-up before the storm is never good energetically. Once the front passes, the negative ions are calming. Yep. Yep. I'm watching the radar, and it doesn't look like anything severe, at least not for quite a while, is going to be interfering with us. Let me check here the hourly projected forecast. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, well, all right. It looks like we are going to be in rain mode for a while. All right, that I'm good with that. Geiger says, I'm surprised he lets her talk as well. I think he's genuinely upset over the Trump situation. Yes, I would agree. I would agree with that. And Catherine has been, in her way, trying to get through to Trump, you know, that you need to have a war council on how to deal, of people you can trust, of how to deal with these deep state shenanigans. Mate 87 says, the Baltic origins of Homer's epic tales by Felice Vinci, speaking of Scandinavian Atlantis theory, actually, Mate, Rudbeck explores that in his Atlanticum, that big, thick book that he wrote. He explores that and Jason and the Argonauts in a Scandinavian context. And again, it sounds totally nutty until you actually sit down and understand why Rudbeck was arguing that way. It is fascinating. It's very fascinating. So anyway, got to check my email here, guys, real fast. Yay. Uh-oh. Ah, I fear that I may have missed a Vidchat question here, guys. Hang on. I think I did. This one is from Eric. A good thing I went in there just to see what was going on. Sorry about that, Eric. Okay. That's an interesting question from Eric. I'm going to put that right there because it's kind of related to that. It's kind of related to that. All right. Chartreuse says, watching guests like Roger Stone and Jerome Corsi when Alex seems to go off is interesting too. He seems out of control much of the time, and he's definitely getting worse. but his audience is huge. Paul Joseph Watson has a larger audience. Yeah, you know, Watson is interesting. I kind of wish Watson, between you and me and the doorpost, um, I I kind of hope that Watson strikes off on his own. He's smart. He's got a style. He's got a delivery that's very unique, and I think he could do it on his own. But yeah, I'm with you, Chartreuse. Jones just seems to me to be certain guests he just cannot let talk, and I've seen it with when he has uh, Stone on and Pechenik on. He doesn't let them talk. I don't know. So anyway, Winston says, I just started Hamlet's Mill. Ha, congrats. And there's a lot of parallels with Cosmic War, Marduk's remeasuring the structure of the deep and the metaphor. Very interesting book. Yes, it is. It's one of those books that you think about a lot and you constantly go back to. It's very, very interesting. Anyway, let's see here if I missed anybody that snuck into the chat room recently. I think I said hello to Ramura. Anakephaleosis is in the chat room, so welcome to Anakephaleosis. And Generic Pagan just snuck into the chat room, so welcome to Generic. Anyway, very, very interesting stuff. Eudemonist makes a very good point. AJ forces his guests to endorse his point of view. Yeah, certain guests, and that is an interesting point, Eudemonist. Because he's particularly interested in maneuvering Stone and Pechenik and Corsi and some of those other people. Yeah, that's right. He is hard to listen to, especially when he's constantly interrupting. Lady Dashwood says, I've just started reading Rulers of Evil by F. Tupper Saucy. Anybody else here read that or familiar? I'm familiar with it. I have a copy. I haven't read it. I really, really want to read that. The trouble is, Lady Dashwood, I'm doing 2 books right now. I've just started writing both of them. The second one, which is a really fun one, at least for me, I just had a couple days ago a piece of, in fact, the centerpiece of some of the research arrive in the mail. So when I get done with reading that, I'm going to be on a blue streak to get that one done. I want to get it done for reasons that will become apparent when everybody finds out what it's about. But it's on my reading list. Let me put it that way. That was a long way to go around Harvey's barn, not referring to the person in the chat room to say something. A cult fan gives us a link for those who enjoy learning about C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien with regards to their occult influences. That would be interesting. Email me that link. I think I've read that before. There are a bunch of fundamentalist Christians that have been going out of their way to try and demonize Lewis and Tolkien, largely because they were both very high church. That's really the reason. C.S. Lewis, most people don't know it about him, but C.S. Lewis was very, very high church. Uh, Church of England high church, which in Oxford means you're going to probably be more Catholic than the Roman Catholics. So, anyway. We are going to get started here, guys, in about 40 minutes. We're going to start right at 2 because we don't have that many questions, and I'll stick around, take some questions from the chat room, which we haven't done in years and years and years. And I know what this means. This means that the next vid chat I'm going to get slammed. That's okay. That's okay. Got to have those vid chats too. Those can be fun as well. Those can be fun as well. And people may also be thinking that today's vid chat is actually later in the day. So that's a possibility. Hang on, guys. Just had something come in on. Don't know what that's about. Sorry. It appears that someone was trying to get in. Winston says volume 2 of the tome is very explanatory. Cleared up a lot of things. Ah, okay. You're welcome. Surprisingly, our Australian contingent is not here. And that kind of surprises me, but it is the European African Vidchat, and they are always thinner that day than they are on the later Vidchats because of the time, because of the time difference. Excuse me. The problem is most people misinterpret Mere Christianity. You have to remember, Lewis was high Anglican, and that means he was definitely writing from an exposure to the patristic tradition, and that's what he's referring to. He's not referring to kind of a wishy-washy ecumenical Protestant thing out there, and many people don't get that about that book. Anyway. Okay, I got the link. Thank you, Occult Fan. Checking all of my email folders here, guys, just to make sure I didn't do like I had done with Eric the Swede and overlook a question. For those of you newbies, always remember to put VidChat questions in the subject header of the email in all capitals. That helps me just kind of pull, if you want to bring things to my attention, use capitals anyway, and give me a theme in your subject header, because that will bring it to my attention much easier. You need $1 million to get into Australia. Wow. Well, Australia's out for me then, guys. I'm not anywhere close to that. Let's see here. Harvey's Barn says, anyone watching the young Pope? I try not to watch this Pope. Winston says, now that chat we had about Charlemagne makes more sense to me now. Yep. Yep. You've got two very, very discrete, disparate interpretations of Charlemagne, and it depends on where you're coming from, quite literally. Winston says, I still want to move to Russia and be a farmer. Oh, Harvey's Barnes says, no, it's a new show, The Young Pope. No, not my cup of tea. I can just kind of predict what they're going to do in a show like that. I can just predict it. Everything will be gung-ho except traditional Catholicism. That's the problem. Winston says, anywhere in Russia I'll move to. A cult fan says he's just excited for Twin Peaks. I am too. I just finished watching that, A Cult Fan, the whole series. Golly, it was not very long ago. It was maybe 3.5 to 4 weeks ago that my friends and I finished watching the entire series front to back. I'm really intrigued to see whether or not David Lynch is going to be able to pull it off and give us a good sequel. You know, after all the hype about the X-Files coming back and what a colossal, gigantic that was. I'm not holding my breath, to be honest with you. But Billy Shears in the chat room. Welcome to Billy Shears. A cult fan is asking, what's your favorite story arc without spoilers? My favorite story arc in that series was the Air Force Major, believe it or not. I thought that was kind of a little spice to the recipe. So without giving away much else, I'll just say that. Well, yeah, X-Files is not Lynch. X-Files is not Lynch. But still, you know, Carter started out with a good storyline, plot line, and then it got ridiculous after season 3 or 4, you know, with the black goo. But the Return X-Files, I just, you know, it was bad. Anyway, all right, here we go. We have oh, wow. Just had this one is a weird one. This one is a weird one. Just had another question come in, guys, so I've got to print this out. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Questions coming in, guys. More questions coming in. Hang on, I'm not watching the chat room right now, guys. Got to get these sorted and slotted. All right, that one goes there. This one is from K-Tower, I think. So, 2 more questions just came in, guys. All right, we're back. Let's see. Yeah, poor Terry. We were rather merciless. All right, let's see here. I want to put this right Wow, what odd, interesting questions, guys. Wow, wow, wow. Twin Peaks, probably the best way to watch that, Cond, is on Netflix or just to buy the DVDs. Um, just like a cult fan said there. But Twin Peaks is one of those shows that you have to watch in order. You cannot jump in and skip around. You have to watch that series from episode 1 to the final episode of season 2 to get the real impact of it. It is such a bizarre series. There's no words for it, and it will draw you in. It's a storyline, very much like Babylon 5. You have to watch from beginning to end to really get it. It's bizarre. All right, let me refresh my window here, guys, just to make sure I've caught everybody. We are going to start in just about half an hour, maybe a little earlier, because I just got a couple of questions that might be for some rather extended commentary. So, Shoe Dog. Welcome to Shoe Dog in the chat room. Just snuck in on us. And let me see, anybody else here I've missed? I think we're good. You can kind of hear probably the rumble of the thunder in the background, folks. So I had better check my radar again to see what's going on. As I said before, everybody, we are having severe weather in the area. And that may mean I might just suddenly get up and run away to hit the storm shelter, or that the power might go out and I'm not able to log back on. So if that happens, if things just suddenly go blank, please understand that means it will take me time, even if power comes back on, to get back on the air. It takes me about 20 minutes to set that up. So give me, you know, that's the standing rule. Give me about 20 to 25 minutes to get back. If I'm not back by that time, it means probably the power is still out. But we are having some storms here. Dana says, put a mic outside so that we can hear the thunder. I don't have any way to do that. Where I'm situated in my office is not close to any window or door, and I don't have enough plugins or things to do that. A cult fan says, are you familiar with Mike Clelland's work on owls and aliens and synchronicity? No. However, I always thought that the owl symbolism there was very, very carefully researched. Busy Dealer says she'll have to watch those two shows. Again, Busy Dealer, you have to watch. You have to give, number one, you have to give both of them time. And number two, you have to watch from the beginning to the very end in order to get the full impact of both series. Babylon 5 is just a classic space opera. It really is, and it's a very good one. Some of the special effects are dated now, but nonetheless, it's still worth watching. Twin Peaks is just a rich tapestry, is what it is. It's a rich tapestry of occult symbolism and context and a story and people moving through it. It's a very, very different series. Anyway, 20 minutes, guys. I'll probably take my usual pre-chat break, and I'm also going to be looking for my pipe and tobacco. So I'll take a little earlier break than normal. Welcome to K Tower in the chat room. There's a little rumble of thunder. Maybe you guys heard that. Busy Dealer, there are aspects of Twin Peaks that are like a comedy noir, classic black comedy. There are. Overall, the series itself is not, but there are whole themes within it that are. I don't know how to describe it. The sound froze momentarily there, Eudemonus, because I was trying to reboot my chat window to make sure that I had everybody in it. Geiger says, I wasn't crazy about the first season of Twin Peaks, so I haven't watched the second. Babylon 5, I watched a few seasons so far. Mate 87 says they will probably wreck the Twin Peaks in the remake. I don't know. Supposedly this is a continuation of the story, just like the X-Files. So I don't know how to answer that. Winston says, I finally watched Person of Interest. Wow, the Battle of the Gods. Yeah, that's a kind of leaves you thinking, doesn't it, Winston? That's another one of my favorite series. The OA, I don't know what OA is, guys. Please quit talking in abbreviations. It's like saying TP for Twin Peaks. Come on, spell it out. Give the rest of us a chance. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to start talking in letters and let you guys guess what I'm talking about. That's the title, OA. It's called the OA. All right. There is no spelling it out. I stand corrected. Thank you. Oy vey. Oy vey, says a cult fan. It's the oy vey. All right, I stand corrected, guys. But you know why I said it. Some of you give me these strings of anagrams, and I'm supposed to guess. Anyway, it's really good. It makes you think. All right. I'll keep that in mind, but I don't have any way of watching anything on cable. I haven't got my television hooked up, so I'll have to wait for it to come out on DVD. Because I don't have Netflix either and won't get it. You know me, I'm a hard copy guy. Oh, don't get me started, a cult fan. You don't want to go there. I'm very good at it. Very good at it. Winston says, person of interest does make one wonder. It's frightening, actually, if you really think about what it is implying. Yep. It certainly does. That and then some. I have to wonder sometimes too, even about Fringe, because Fringe added to stories I've recently blogged about makes you wonder. Makes you wonder. Okay, guys, about 15 minutes. I'm going to take my break here maybe in about 5 to 10 minutes. Occult fan. Fringe shows how we can access other dimensions using frequency shifts. Remember how one universe is in the key of C and the other in A or whatever. The tuning fork analogy. Yep. Now, folks, if you're clever, I'm not going to suggest it. I'm just going to hint at it. If you're clever, you'll find that there's a Vidchat question lurking in there. And it's got to do with, well, I'm not going to tell you. It's one reason I've emphasized music so much in the books. In Babylon's Banksters and in Grid of the Gods. I'm not going to say anything. People have to articulate the question. Articulating the question is part of the answer. I suspect that even Sebastian Bach knew because he hinted at it one time. Oh, you're all over the board here. See, now that I say something, you're grasping without thinking. Oh, it's got to be this. Oh, it's got to be that. Come on, folks. Slow down. Think about it. Think about it. Slow down. Think about it. No more hints. Oh, my. This is good because I can hear everybody out there. They're thinking. They're thinking. Enrico is in the chat room. Yes, it is Gödel Escher Bach territory. All right, guys, I'm going to refresh my chat window here. Then I'm going to get up, go make some tea, take care of my pre-chat duties, and try and find my pipe and tobacco. So it will be a longer break than I normally take, but I shall return. Remember, we're having bad weather. If I get bumped off the air, give me about 20 to 25 questions, or 20 to 25 minutes, pardon me, and I'll be back. I did get it, K-Tar. I'll be back. Okay, there we are. Sorry about that, guys. Had to kind of top up the tea and find my pipe, which wasn't as difficult as I was expecting it to be. It was one of those things that was, pardon me, right in front of my eyes when I looked at it before, and I just didn't see it. Anyway, so let me check my emails here again. Look up dimensional jumping. It's something a culture host, Ryan Peverly, showed me. That sounds interesting. Thank you. Jeannie says, nice Western shirt. Thank you, Jeannie. In fact, I bought a bunch of these things last fall at a Western wear store where I live. They were on sale, so I stocked up. It's a nice store. It's locally owned, and I prefer to shop there for, you know, dress things. And I do like it, the store. I don't like shopping at big chains if I can possibly afford it. Yeah. But there's a nice big Western wear store where I live, and I bought this and a bunch of other shirts. I went hog wild on shirts. But once the virtual organ comes, I've also got my organ clothes. I used to be, I'm weird because I used to, you probably guessed that by now, haven't you, folks? But anyway, Schwarzenstein is in the chat room. Black Stone is in the chat room. Let us know what country you're from, Schwarzenstein. But anyway, my organ playing clothes were usually a nice pair of dress slacks and a vest. And yeah, I was very bad. I always wore a hat when I did that too. So anyway, so let us know what country you're from, Schwarzenstein. Got 5 minutes to go. The USSA, he responds. All right. Will I show you my organ hat? It's a Homburg, you demonist. It's nothing more than a Homburg. Hang on. Excuse me. All right, I can't put this on over my earphones, you demonist, but there you are. There it is. A genuine Homburg. When I was a kid, I used to have a Homburg when I was a boy. My dad occasionally wore them, although he wore fedoras. Will you wear the Pickelhaube? No. I'll probably wear the Homburg. If I wear a hat, you know, I used to always play in a baseball cap or a cowboy hat. But anyway, yes, there you have it. You have a Homburg. And I like it. It's actually a comfortable hat. It's a very comfortable hat. Goes well with the shoes. Yep. Yep. All right, guys, 5 minutes to go. Then we are starting. We will be live. We're already live, but we're going to be doing the formal vid chat. You could be a great character. I'm thinking of The Sopranos. Oh, no, no, no. No. I would have to be more like a Moriarty character, you demonist. The shy, unassuming, unprepossessing professor that by night is the ominous grease behind all manner of machination. Anyway, a cult fan says, "I'm your Sherlock." uh, no, I couldn't improve on Jared Harris as Moriarty. I enjoyed his portrayal of the character. Chartreuse says, "I bought a shungite pyramid." Wow. I do think it makes a difference in its environment. Yeah, it's a calming thing. It's very weird. It's a calming thing. But do me a favor, Chartreuse, don't let anybody pick it up. You have to keep the energy yours. Anyway, all right, guys, let's get the show on the road. There's the doff of the hat. This is it, the beginning of our African European time zone members Vidchat. Let me say hello to everybody so far in the chat room with us today. We have a cult fan, Steve Heppel, Condon, California. Winston, 1984, an old regular with us again. Chartreuse, another regular. Enrico in Helle in Nuttyfornia. And Harvey's Barn, Eudemonist, Lady Dashwood, K-Tower. Dana is joining us all the way from Italy. Mate 87 in Estonia. Chime, Jeannie, Geiger, Billy Shears, Blake Cosmos. Leon is joining us from The Hague in the Netherlands, shortly to be in Singapore. So congratulations, Leon. Shoe Dog, Generic Pagan, RB44, Byzantura is joining us all the way from Belgium. And we have Ramura Anakephaleosis and Eric the Swede from a little town not too far from Stockholm. All right. So there you have it. 27 people in the chat room right now, and about 33, it looks like, on the actual viewers on YouTube. So here we go. This one is from Jarrett. Jarrett is not in the chat room, so I'm going to start with him anyway. He says, and this is an interesting question. I think we've had it before. If my memory serves me correctly, somebody else asked this question before. Anyway, he says, long ago I stopped believing in coincidences as being pure chance. With that in mind, why is it the same spelling of the German word Nazi in the Nazi Party and Ashkenazi Jews? If the Nazi Party were something from, say, a different continent, I could maybe see this as being a coincidence, but as we all know, the two factions we speak of here are well acquainted with each other. Therefore, I'm wondering what is going on here at a deeper level. Well, I hate to burst your bubble, Jarrett. I've heard this. This is a meme that has been going around on the internet. It is largely a meme that has been propagated by what I would call neo-Nazis or white supremacists or what have you. It is much ado about nothing. There is no etymological, philological relationship. That is to say, there's no formally documentable linguistic relationship between the term Ashkenazim and the term Nazi. Nazi is a Germanization, really, and a kind of an abbreviation for the National Socialist German Workers' Party, which is the formal name of the party that we know as the Nazi Party. And in German, Nazi simply comes from when you pronounce the German name of the party, Nationalsozialistische Deutsche Arbeiterpartei. When you pronounce it in German, National, you can hear the Nazi in the way the Germans will pronounce the word national, National, all right? It has nothing to do with Ashkenazim, which is a Hebrew terminology. However, that said, in other words, get your mind off of the silliness of the resemblance of this little term with that little term. That's pseudo or fake philology, all right? That said, there is a relationship, in my opinion, between the Ashkenazim section of Jewry in Europe and the Nazi Party, in that if you look at the supporters for the idea of a Jewish homeland or Zionism, if you look at who they are, the leaders of that movement, Max Nordau, Theodor Herzl, people like this, if you look at the leadership of that movement, most of the leadership is coming from the Sephardic population of European Jewry. And most of the popular support for the idea, on the other hand, is coming from the Ashkenazim population of European Jewry. So what am I talking about? The Sephardic population of European Jewry is largely a population that genuinely, by bloodline, descends from the ancient Hebrews and dispersed themselves in Western Europe, Central and Western Europe, okay? And the Sephardic population of European Jewry, if you look at its kind of thinking by the time of the late 19th, early 20th century, was more or less an assimilationist population. In other words, they were more about being German Jews than they were about being German Jews. Follow me? The Ashkenazim population, on the other hand, is a population that, to a certain extent, descends from the conversion of the Khazars in Eastern Europe to Jewry, all right? And hence you find the term being bandied about nowadays, Khazarian Mafia. That's the population that is a converted population that converted in the Middle Ages in the Ukraine and so on, and then spread from the Ukraine throughout European Russia and into Eastern Europe predominantly, all right? The two populations do mix and mingle to some extent, but the Khazars, the Ashkenazim, are a, if I can put it this way, a bloodline or racially different population than the Sephardim, all right? The Zionist movement is kind of a peculiar blend of the two, because you had the Sephardic leaders appealing to the non-assimilating and non-assimilationist Ashkenazim population. Remember, the Ashkenazim in Eastern Europe, predominantly in Russia, were not allowed to assimilate to the degree that they were, and you know, that's all relative here, folks, to the degree that they were in Western Europe. And even then, in Western Europe, it takes time to allow that to happen. Certainly the assimilation isn't there in the 15th century. By the late 19th century, particularly in countries like France or Germany, it's well underway. You still have that European anti-Semitism thing. So there is a relationship, because the Nazis, if you look at the Nazis and their relationship with these Zionists that Christopher Simpson in the book Blowback talks about, it is predominantly with the Ashkenazim that they have this relationship, because they're training them. You know, the SS, believe it or not, is training a bunch of Jewish guerrillas to go into the British Mandate in Palestine and, through terrorism, wreak havoc and create a climate of opinion. for a Jewish homeland. So they are, to a certain extent, in bed together. It's just a bizarre history. There have been a number of books about it. Some are kind of hard to find nowadays. But there have been a number of books about it. But the best thing to do if you're interested in the question is to read people like Ben Hecht or Hannah Arendt or Alfred Lilienthal. In other words, read the Jewish critiques of Zionism and why they're against it, because you'll learn a lot that a non-Jewish audience that's not familiar with their traditions wouldn't know. All right, this one is from Steve Heppel. This one, let me see if Steve's still in the room here. I think he is. This one is a really interesting question. It's one that we have not had before. It's one that I wasn't really prepared for. Had I known it was coming, I might have tried to get out some of my old books and refresh my memory here. Here it is. He says, over the years, I have read several stories online about the theory that the Romanovs were not executed, but were smuggled out of Russia. Some stories say they lived in Germany, and some say England. I can bet you have heard the rumors. So what are your thoughts on this matter, and do you think that there is any truth to them? That is a bizarre question. I am familiar with the theories that you're talking about. For many years, as you're probably aware, there was the theory that the Grand Duchess Anastasia had survived somehow the execution of the rest of her family in Sverdlovsk and smuggled herself out of Russia and then into the West. And the reason that that story got so many legs or had such wings was that there was a lady in the 1920s and 1930s in Europe, in Great Britain, subsequently in this country, who claimed to be the Grand Duchess. And she was convincing enough in her story that many people believed her, and many people to this day believe it. All right. Now, I'm not one of those. This is all just kind of prologue, Steve, to my attempt to answer your question. The strange thing about the Romanovs is that, of course, they had the Tsarevich Alexei. And if I remember my rules of the monarchical succession in Russia, was that if there was no male heir, it went to the first female heir. So in other words, that would have been one of the Grand Duchesses, had Nicholas and Alexandra not conceived and had Alexei, who of course was a hemophiliac. So kind of a tragedy there that in pursuit of a male heir, they literally bring into the succession someone with tremendous health problems. It's an irony. Wilhelm II in Germany also, with his withered left hand. It's almost as if these old dynasties are kind of dooming themselves. Now, the problem here, where these stories get their start, is that when Nicholas and Alexandra and their children are placed under house arrest by the Bolsheviks, Nicholas at that point, if my memory is serving me correctly, Steve, Nicholas at this point writes his cousin, who is of course King George V. And you can go online and find a famous picture of King George V and Tsar Nicholas II standing next to each other wearing the uniforms of each other's country, okay? And the two of them, it is very, very clear that the two of them have a family relationship. They could be brothers, not just cousins, all right? He appeals to King George V for help and assistance in getting his family and himself out of Russia. And there was, if I remember correctly, there was a debate in the United Kingdom, in the Privy Council, and within, I think at one point, even within the cabinet, of trying to get the imperial family out of Russia. That is as far as it goes, as far as I know, Steve. There was also a discussion about Romanov gold, because apparently, and again, Steve, I don't know if this is a verifiable story or not. It's something I have heard. Apparently, in the process of trying to get the British royal family to help the Russian imperial family, the Romanovs sent an amount of their family possessions and sent an amount of Russian treasury gold to Britain, which has since disappeared. All right. I do know that some of the Romanov family did get out, it was a large family, did get out of Russia. I've met one of the Romanovs years and years ago. But you have that in the picture, that something happened and the British basically reneged on an agreement. Would the British have, the key question here, Steve, for me is, would the British have been capable of getting the Romanov family out of Russia, particularly at that time and under those circumstances? Had they got them out of St. Petersburg, yes, I think it's feasible. If, on the other hand, you're talking about a British mission to get the Romanovs out of Sverdlovsk, or Ekaterinenburg, as it was known at the time, and is known again now, by the way. They changed the name, after the Soviet period. Sverdlovsk, it was named Sverdlovsk because he was one of the guys in the execution committee that the Bolsheviks sent to shoot the imperial family. All the evidence, including the bones of the imperial family in the Kremlin, strongly suggest to me that those are the relics of the imperial family, that they were indeed murdered. There has been rumor that some of those bones may not have been there originally, or that some of the bones are missing, specifically, guess who? Grand Duchess Anastasia, and I've even heard that the Tsarevich Alexei's bones were missing. That story is iffy. So there's a lot of question marks here. Years ago, there was a study, just as the Soviet Union was collapsing, and I wish I could remember the name, Steve, of the book, because this is the book I wanted to find had I known I was going to be asked this question. I believe the title of the book is called The Last Tsar, all right? And I forget who the author's name is. It was a paperback book. It was about, I'd say, an inch and a quarter to an inch and a half thick. And the book was an examination of the Sokolov examination. And that's another one you have to be aware of, because Sokolov was a guy after the Russian Revolution that, to the best of his ability, sat down and looked at the evidence and the story of the murder of the imperial family, and concluded that there was enough evidence to suggest that maybe the whole thing was kind of contrived and that the family made it out of there. So there is a question mark. I'm satisfied that something unusual is not being told about the murder of the imperial family. However, that said, I'm skeptical of the stories about the Grand Duchess. I'm skeptical about the stories of the Tsarevich, because they do have their bones in the Kremlin, and the bones have satisfied church authorities. So in other words, the church, before they inter the bones, is going to be very, very insistent that the funeral rites are really for those for whom they are being celebrated. So they're going to be very, very fussy and picky and demand a relatively high standard of evidentiary backing. So yeah, Dana is correct. You can visit the imperial tombs in the Peter and Paul Fortress in St. Petersburg. So I do think that there's a story here that we're not being told. I'm just skeptical that the story is that the imperial family escaped. I think there's something else here, and it may go to what the Romanovs did, what the Tsar and Tsarina did with their family wealth. You know, they certainly just didn't sit around and let it happen to them. Particularly Alexandra. She was, you know, a hands-on, day-to-day ruler, and effectively running Russia until, you know, Nicholas's abdication. So, very good question there. This one, Tim H., welcome to the chat room from Australia. Yeah, if he's saying that he has a book downstairs by two English guys about the Romanovs. I think, Tim, you're probably thinking about the same book I am. It's a paperback, if my memory serves me correctly, and I wish I had had time to try and find that. It's an interesting question. There is something else going on there, but I think most of the theories that are out there are just not, they're just not reading things correctly. Mate 87 says Dmitry Medvedev is uncannily similar to Nicholas II. Mine sounds the bad teeth, you know. If Medvedev would grow a beard, yeah, I suspect that he would look rather like Nicholas II. All right, this one is from Billy Shears, and this is another very short but very, very, very provocative question. He says, can you comment on the similarities and differences of Tesla and Einstein's various theories and thoughts on physics? I'd be interested in any Farrell correlations or corollaries on said subjects. Oh, wow. All right. Yeah, I can comment. Tesla, if you have really dove into Tesla and Einstein did actually meet, okay? Tesla was absolutely murderous in his criticism of Einstein's general relativity, because Tesla thought, unlike Einstein, that the idea of a physical body of large mass, like a star or a planet, acting to warp or twist the geometry of space and time was nonsense, because for Tesla, the way he was reading Einstein was he was in understanding Einstein to take the space-time continuum as quite literally a non-material entity. So in other words, for Tesla, operating within an old Cartesian dualism between spirit and matter, something cannot act on nothing. Okay, that's the way he phrased it. The other big problem that Tesla had with Einstein was the idea of the speed of light being a constant, a universal constant in all frames of reference. All right. Now, what does that mean? What that means is that regardless of who is observing it, the speed of light is going to remain absolutely the same in all observer-oriented frames of reference. So in other words, it's always going to be approximately 186,000 miles per second, with no variations, all right? And Tesla, of course, in his Colorado experiments particularly, began to notice what he was calling kind of electroacoustical waves that were non-Hertzian. In other words, they weren't the sine waves of a Hertz wave, but they were longitudinal pressure waves, okay, that were, in his estimation, traveling faster than the velocity of light. So Tesla had um, those two big problems with Einstein. The problem is, I think, that Tesla was not understanding Einstein properly, because you can go and read Einstein himself wrote a small little book. Let me see if I can find it here. Well, no, I can't find it right off the top of my head. Einstein wrote a small little book. I think it appeared in 1927, thereabouts, where he's trying to discuss his theories and the whole development of physics. And he comes right out and says that relativity does not get rid of the idea of an ether, okay? What he is saying is that whatever this ether is, mass, a large mass can warp it or cause it to compress or rarefy. And that's exactly what Tesla was saying when he said he has found an electrical wave of some sort that appeared to be a longitudinal wave in the medium. In other words, what's Tesla saying? Well, the medium is compressing and rarefacting. It's warping, just like Einstein said. So I've always thought that if the two of them had ever kind of put aside their squabble and sat down and really talked to each other, they may have come up with some real definite breakthroughs. We have to remember a very interesting thing about both men. Einstein was, of course, after 1916, when the general theory of relativity came out, Einstein was on this quest for the rest of his life to try and unify the geometries of gravitation and electromagnetism. And as I put it in Secrets of the Unified Field, the two geometries are very different. Gravitation is a kind of a spherical space warp geometry. Electromagnetism is a kind of donut geometry. So how do you, if the forces are unified, what sort of geometry would unify those two things? So Einstein is working on this problem for the rest of his life. Well, so in a certain sense is Tesla, because Tesla, also a great mathematician, you know, most people don't know that about him. But Tesla's trying to do more or less the same thing. But Einstein's approaching it from the gravity side, and Tesla's approaching it from the electromagnetism side. You see what's going on? So they never really, just like physics itself, the two men never really understand where the other's coming from, all right? If I were to put my money, Billy, on which of them was, so to speak, closer to finding or coming up with a solution to a unified field theory, my bet would be on Tesla, for the simple reason that Tesla, unlike Einstein, is an actual experimental physicist. He's approaching everything from the standpoint of an engineer trying to solve a problem. So in other words, he's definitely a more practical-minded man. If you recall reading Einstein, Einstein comes up with the theory of relativity, the special relativity, and then later general relativity, by what he calls thought experiments. In other words, he's doing experiments in his head and coming to certain conclusions and then doing the math. All right, that's what he's doing. So he's not tinkering with an experiment to come up with relativity. The experiments for relativity, particularly general relativity, were performed by Arthur Eddington after general relativity came out, with the experiments on bending light in a solar eclipse. That's how general relativity was experimentally verified. The problem that they're not telling you is that general relativity predicts values for the bending of light in the mass of a star in a certain span, all right, depending on the mass. The shifts of light that were observed in 1921 by Eddington did not fall within the predicted values of the general theory of relativity. That's what they're not telling you, all right? They were in such a rush to crown Einstein as the greatest physicist of all times that they are not telling you that they fudged the data, all right? So in that, there's quite a tale too. So I've always been more on the Tesla side than the Einstein side, although I do think Tesla misread Einstein, principally because he didn't read or talk with Einstein. He was listening to what other physicists were saying about Einstein's theory. That, I think, is the real problem here. All right, good question. Now this one is, let me refresh the user window here, because I have a question here from Freefall in Australia, and I just want to make sure that she is or is not in the room. So let me do a quick run through the list here. Not seeing Freefall. Tomas, welcome to Tomas. All right, Tim, it's up to you to relay the answer to Freefall. And she says, a couple of questions. When discussing the whereabouts of trillions of missing dollars, Catherine Fitz, in a recent interview, stated that the Earth appeared to be a small part of a much larger off-world corporation. And it appears that a tithe of some sorts is being paid for some reason to someone or someones. That statement comes from the movie Jupiter Ascending. As she noted in the film, Mankind's creator, the psychopathic Balaam, is one of three siblings of an alien dynasty, the House of Abrasax, that has arrived in spacecraft to harvest the humans of the Earth. And Jupiter is trying to avert our grisly fate. Balaam tells Jupiter, this is a quotation from the film, quote, life is an act of consumption, Jupiter. To live is to consume. Now the human beings on your planet Earth are merely resources waiting to be converted into capital. And this entire enterprise is just a small part in a vast and beautiful machine defined by evolution, designed to a single purpose, to create profit. Who would be receiving, and that's the end of the quotation, the question continues, who would be receiving this tithe and why? Any thoughts? Much appreciated. Thanks for reading, Joseph. All right. To answer that, Sue, you have to ask, where's the evidence? All right. Now, for Catherine and I, pardon me here, folks, I've got to write something down. For Catherine and I, the evidence has been principally twofold. She has noticed a lot of missing money whose presence can be detected, so to speak, by its absence, okay? And what do I mean by that? Well, as I've said many times, if you put money into the economy, it's like putting electricity into an electrical circuit. that energy, that flow, and money represents what? Money represents energy, right? It represents work or action to be performed. So in other words, there is always a connection. This is why economies and physical models are always going hand in hand, because money, quite literally, is a physical thing. It represents energy or force doing work, all right? So if you put energy into an electrical circuit, that energy has to pop out at a load end somewhere, okay? So Catherine and I, we both came on this idea kind of at the same time by very, very different routes. She's noticing all of this money is missing and the signals are not showing up in the economy. In other words, if all of that money is in the economy, we should be seeing hyperinflation. Should have seen it long before now. And yet, it's not there. At least it's not there to the degree that we should be seeing it. And just like an electrician would do, if not enough power is coming out at the load end, then the electrician is going to be thinking, well, there's a leak somewhere in the circuit. It's just like a plumber. There's a leak in the plumbing. That money is being siphoned off, if I can use the plumbing analogy, is being siphoned off and going somewhere else then. That's basically evidentiary clue number one. All right. Now, for my part, the other part of the evidentiary clue is the ancient texts. All right. Because other than that suggestion in human prehistory handed down in these ancient texts, we have no other signal or sign as to what might be happening to that money. But when you read those texts, what do you have? Well, you have the gods or Satan and his fallen hosts or what have you that are literally using mankind as what? Well, as labor capital, all right? Just like the movie suggests. And to signify or symbolize the total sovereignty of those gods over that labor capital, what do they demand? Well, they demand sacrifice. We want your firstborn, or we want this animal or something. The ancient text would suggest, in other words, something very similar, that there is a, so to speak, a corporate entity, or if you follow my Versailles template model, a treaty template model, and both need not be exclusive of the other, that's in play here. So who is getting this? I would aver that it's the ancient enemy. Satan and his fallen hosts, or the ancient ones, the ancient gods, the bad ones. I suspect that that's the arrangement. This is why, let me clue you in, this is why Christianity is under such assault. Why? Because in any of its forms, Eastern, Western, Northern, Southern, but particularly Western, you have a direct blow against the whole sacrificial tribute tithe model, right? And you have a direct blow against what underlies that model, which is the idea, I talked about this in Grid of the Gods, which is the idea of perpetual, unpayable debt. All right? That's key. What I am suggesting here is that the God who keeps those account books isn't so much God as we think of it, but Lucifer. And incidentally, if you read the Greek fathers of the church, that's kind of the suggestion they give you. In particular, a Greek father by the name of Gregory Nazianzus who challenges this whole idea of an infinite sacrifice being owed to God, payable only by man, but since God alone is infinite, God alone can pay it, and therefore he has to become man. You know, the whole Anselmian God as account keeper approach. Well, Gregory of Nazianzus comes right out and says, well, who are we paying this to? If to the devil, then fie on the outrage. We don't owe the devil anything, and neither does God. And God's not the one demanding it. Okay? So in other words, the interesting thing is that there is at least one religion, and probably a few more, that are taking direct aim at this idea of corporation, sacrifice, tithe, and all of this nonsense. And it's that religion that is under such assault. All of this is related, folks, is what I'm trying to tell you. All right, now this one is from Dana, and this one is a really good one. In fact, it's more commentary than question, and I want you guys to listen very, very closely. I just got another set of questions in, guys. Hang on here. Let me pause and try and get this printed up. I think I'm going to institute a new rule that after the chat is started, no more Vidchat questions will be accepted, and it will be archived for the next session. But I'm going to do it today. Let's see here, get this one done. There we go. Hang on here, folks. Sorry about this. All right, and that one is going to have to go here. All right, so getting back now to this one from Dana, and Dana is in the chat room, I believe. Yep, all right. And welcome to Todd6Dot that just entered the chat room, and I think somebody else did too here. I think Tomas did. Anyway, welcome to the newcomers here. All right, this one from Dana. Now, as I said, this is more commentary than question, because he's raising questions about something that has recently appeared that I also share. So Dana, I'm going to doff my hat here on this one and tell you I'm thinking exactly the same thing before I even read what it is. I want everybody to listen very carefully. He says, "Hi, Joseph. I have to ask you what you think about the perplexing patent problem, which I posted on the community forum the other day. This is it in essence. An inventor, a certain Mr. John Quincy Sinclair, supposedly had his patents published by Google between 2005 and 2006. These are, number one, electric dipole moment propulsion system, a spacecraft propulsion system utilizing a rotating octagon of trapezoidal electrically charged flat panels. Number two, permanent magnet propulsion system for a train that uses permanent magnets mounted on a rotating iron cylindrical plate. Three, electric dipole spacecraft, a rotating spacecraft that produces an electric dipole on 4 rotating spherical conducting domes. Number 4, remote viewing amplifier. Number 5, photon spacecraft. Number 6, full body teleportation system. Number 7, triangular spacecraft with electrostatic line charges. And let me stop there. Who does that sound like? I've been saying, as you know, for years, the idea that these triangular spacecraft are too big for humans to build and therefore they have to be extraterrestrial, I have thought is, again, more bad argumentation from the ufology community because simply build a big gas bag, fill it full of helium, make it a dirigible, and use charge differentials or dipoles as the means of propelling it around. Easy, at least conceptually. Number 8, water energy generator. Number 9, walking through walls training system involving hyperspace and remote viewing. 10 and 11 regard mobile telephony, and all the documents can be downloaded. Now, whatever the merits of the patents as such, not much attention seems to have been paid to them as far as I can tell, although they may have supposedly all been public for the past 10 years. And I saw a website with an item showing a date from a few years ago stating that Mr. Sinclair actually had more inventions to his credit than the 11 currently shown on a recent Google search. Question: assuming that the patents with these titles have always been online as claimed, have they perhaps been dismissed as unimportant? Have you come across them in your early research? Now, in answer to the second question, no, I haven't come across them. Could they have always been online as claimed? Have they been dismissed as unimportant? My problem here, Dana, is that this whole patent thing is really getting started by whom? It's being started by Corey Goode, who posted, I suspect, the triangular spacecraft, dipole spacecraft patents as his assertion or confirmation that there's a secret space program that's real and that's out there. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this is typical of that part of this alternative community, in that you're taking someone else's research and using it to buttress your claims, which claims, incidentally, are wildly different than the person that you're taking the research from. That's the problem, as I've always seen it. I want to get to questions 2 and 3 before I respond in more depth. All right? Your second question is this: who's to say if the digital documents we are accessing now are the same as the ones put online 10 years ago? Bingo, Dana, you've seen my problem with digital documentation. This is why I've been insisting with people all along: have the hard paper copy in your hands. That is the canonical text, not something that can be whipped up and posted on the internet without any verification, without any sort of connective provenance. We simply don't know if these patents that we're seeing are the ones that were posted then, unless someone can give us a screenshot, and even then, screenshots themselves can be faked. What I would want is to go and get the actual blueprints, formal filing of these patents, if there are any. Okay, that for me, in hard copy form, would constitute sufficient evidence. Now, that said, there is something here. If you're paying attention, Dana, and thinking, and I suspect you are, there is something here that is arguing for the validity of these patents, and that is the gestalt, or the whole pattern. Because if you look at the enumerated patents that you yourself have outlined in the commentary, they've all got certain conceptual links: the idea of dipoles or charge differentials as a means of propulsion, and there is a peculiar emphasis on what I would call psychotronic technologies technologies to amplify paranormal effects like remote viewing and so on. Okay, so in other words, the output, the total output as you've outlined it, suggests that there is at least an authentic origin to these ideas coming from one person. All right, that to me argues authentic. All right, number two, could there be tampering with internet publication dates in so-called sensitive areas? Not only could there be, I strongly suspect there are. Okay, and it goes back to that corporation thing. Why? Because if you reveal a patent at a certain date, that date begins the countdown before other people can use it without paying royalties or licenses, doesn't it? So if we have a patent, let's say these patents were originally secretly filed in 1975, then their expiration date is a lot closer than if they were filed in 2005. Got me? So would they tamper with them? You betcha they would, in a heartbeat, if only for the reasons of increasing their bottom line. In addition, of course, to security concerns. Question number three. Doesn't the name Sinclair just sound a little too good to be true? Yeah. In fact, you'll notice, Dana, I'm putting your comment and question up here on my shelf because I want to do a little bit more digging into this. I think you've really hit something here. Again, doff the hat. There's a lot more here going on than meets the eye, I suspect, related to the Corey Good shenanigans and so on and so forth. Anyway, excellent. Welcome to Kenny. Kenny, you're new, so let us know what country you're from. All newbies have to let us know what country they're from. Anyway, great question there, Dana. Thank you. Swig of tea time, guys. This one, and let's see here. Let me get a grasp where we're at here. All right, good enough. Let me check also my okay, we're good. All right, guys. This one's from K Tower. And I have a feeling that this is another whopper doozy doff the hat question. All right. So this one's going out to K Tower. Kenny says he's in Puerto Rico. All right. K Tower says this. Last November 30th, Jay Widener published a blog proposing the liberals have been targeted in an attempt to influence the upcoming fourth turning, identified by Strauss and Howe in their 1997 book of the same name. Steve Bannon is on record as a big fan of this book and almost certainly has discussed it with Trump. Fourth turnings or crisis points occur every fourth generation, approximately 80 to 85 years apart. Turnings in the U.S. have been as follows. 1776, the founding of the Republic. 1860 to 61, Civil War. Circa 1940, with the Great Depression rolling into World War II. And another beginning around 2020 and is probably in progress via Trump's victory over Darth Hillary. Fourth turnings clean up the unfinished business of previous ones. The Civil War turning addressed slavery, an issue tabled, she's quite correct here, in 1776 in favor of uniting the colonies and setting up the Republic. Ironically, the 1940-ish turning in World War II provided black soldiers segregated in separate barracks the perfect opportunity to plan to fight for their civil rights when they returned home. I would say the next fourth turning needs to cumulatively address the Nazis that we as a culture thought were vanquished, the cabal's hold on the economy, slavery in the form of human trafficking, especially children, racial issues both contrived and real, and restoring the republic. Any thoughts? I agree. In fact, um, if Strauss and Howe are correct, K-Tower, my guess is that what you're going to see, that the correction that has been needed and is going to be applied is to the whole progressivist, Wilsonian, Gramscian, Marxist, fascist love of socialism, because that's the system that we've seen being adopted more or less everywhere, and it's breaking down. It doesn't, we all know it doesn't work, and yet we keep trying it. This is why I think we're in a huge paradigm change, all right? I think that's one aspect of the turning. So in other words, you're saying Nazis, and I'm saying no, not just Nazis. I think it's about the whole socialist ideology and paradigm in toto, be it Marxist, Gramscian, fascist, Nazi, Demorat, Republithug, you know, they both have their versions of it. I think that's what's under attack and what needs to be examined. Whether or not that's correct, I don't know. I think the other thing that is, as I hinted at earlier, I think the other thing that is going to be addressed eventually is that people are going to turn back and look at how unique and how tremendously influential, whether you like it or not, or whether you believe in any of it or not, how tremendously influential Christianity was to the formation of European culture, and what made it so unique. I think that's another, in other words, I'm suggesting that there's another long-term turning here that is going to be examined, or re-examined, I should say, in terms of whatever is going to emerge on the other side of this. As far as race relations go, I don't know. My suspicion, K-Tower, here would not run so much to race relations, but rather to gender, you know, gender topics, or preferably, to be more accurate, sexual topics, sexuality. I think that the gender issues, transgendered bathrooms, all of this, I think are part of the wider cultural Marxist Gramscian goals, all right? And I think it's really those things that are going to be re-examined. This whole past 50 to 70 years experiment with so-called sexual equality, I think that's going to come under assault, or at least under some very careful scrutiny. Race relations, I'm not so sure of. I'm thinking it's going to be more in the area of sexuality and gender. All right. Continuing. Widener believes the liberals, never more than 20% of the U.S. population, and I wouldn't even say liberal. I would prefer to call these people progressives. In a certain sense, I suspect many of us in this chat room are all kind of classical liberals in the old sense of the term. I think that term is kind of confusing. I prefer the term progressive, but I know what you're talking about. So anyway, with that said, Widener believes that the progressives, to change your wording, never more than 20% of the U.S. population, were manipulated into supporting identity politics because education, the mainstream media, and Hollywood have convinced them that if you don't, you are racist, sexist, and or homophobic. This guaranteed the election of Obama and was supposed to ensure the election of a woman would follow. He offers Trump's populist election and the declining ratings for mainstream media and Hollywood as proof many Americans have stopped paying attention to the propaganda. I don't even know if that's true. I think rather than people stopping and paying attention, K-Tower, I think what you have are an increasing number of people that have continued to watch the propaganda and are using it to get material for their comedy routines, for their own research, and so on. So in other words, they haven't turned it off. They're mocking it, if that makes any sense. So yeah, there's a certain segment of the population like myself that have turned it off and said, no more, I'm not paying you or allowing this any influence on my daily life or thought. I think there's a certain segment of the population very definitely like that. That's kind of a passive approach. I think there's another segment of the population that is delighting in pointing out the charade and the shenanigans and the pretensions of the corporate controlled media. But anyway, I take your point again. Continuing, when Caitlyn Jenner receives the Arthur Ashe Courage Award and Bob Dylan the Nobel Prize for Literature, they've simply lost credibility. I'm not so sure about Dylan. I take your point. Caitlyn Jenner and the Arthur Ashe, no, that made no sense. Arthur Ashe was a genuinely interesting man, suffering, unfortunately, because of an accident. That made no sense to me. But I take your point, because what these things are illustrating are the leveling of the idea of hierarchies of virtue. That, incidentally, folks, was the topic of my address at the Solari Luncheon last weekend in Louisville. I addressed that question very directly. It is also up as a cultural commentary in the members area. I did make some minor modifications to the remarks in the members area in Louisville, but essentially the text is 98% the same. That idea of cultural leveling, I think, is really the paradigm that is going to be scrutinized very, very carefully. So I'm in agreement with you here. Strauss and Howe view turnings as organic, as a force of nature. I can't find any mention of social engineering in their book. Widener claims turnings are spontaneous and cannot be manipulated. Pardon me. This reminded me of listening to John Rappaport recall a lengthy, pardon me again, a lengthy conversation he had with a highly placed cabal member who insisted they were so powerful the citizenry of this country didn't have a chance. Rappaport finally asked, if you're so powerful, why haven't you conquered us yet? The man replied something like this, because you people are so unpredictable. Every time we start to make the final move, you do something totally unexpected, and it sets the whole plan back. When I consider the Great Depression and World War II, it seems to me they were rife with manipulation. Dare we hope they won't get away with it this time? Now, it's interesting, K-Tower, and I want to suggest to you, listen to the most recent dialogue with Daniel that we just did, because we addressed very directly this question. Daniel wanted to talk about Isaac Asimov's Foundation series of science fiction books. I did a paper years ago in the members area on this website about the Foundation series. I don't even know if it's still in the documents section, but listen to the dialogue question anyway, K-Tower, because it is very apparent that the elite have some sort of algorithmic program that allows them to make predictions in the aggregate. And this is really the subject of the this is really the center of Isaac Asimov's Foundation books. But what they cannot adjust, what they cannot plan for, is the individual or even a small group anomaly. All right. They can never predict this, and it always arises and upsets their plan. In the Foundation trilogy, it's a kind of a Napoleonic character called the Mule. In other words, an individual with grandiose ambitions and talents to match, quite frankly, that upsets the whole thing. All right. Um, I would urge you to look at that, because I suspect this is the problem that the elite is panicked about now with President Trump. Trump, in terms of his actual individual personality, wasn't a threat to anybody. But when it tapped into something that is against the overall cyclical pattern and was able to ride that as an anomaly outside of their predictive algorithms, that's what panicked them. And that's why I think they are so enormously panicked in their response, not just to this administration. I think people are getting this wrong. I'm viewing this panic as a cultural phenomenon, not merely a political one. So in other words, it's a reaction of a certain segment of the culture to a cultural change that they fear might come out of this, and not simply to a political cycle. Does that make sense, K Tower? I hope it does, because I think you're getting at something here that I've sensed, that this is a cultural phenomenon. It's not merely a political one. The Hillary Trump election was a cultural turning in the way that you're describing it. Now, my one disagreement with Jay is that these turnings cannot be engineered. I think the overall natural wave cycle cannot be. But I do think, just as I put it in Babylon's Banksters, I do think that you can exacerbate or damp the phase of the cycle that you're in, depending on what you do. All right. I could make analogies about rubber bands here. I'll let everybody think about that one. All right. Now, this one is from Eric the Swede. And this is a rather interesting religious question concerning the resurrection of Jesus and the topological metaphor. This is very interesting. Listen to this. He says, I would like to have these two passages as the starting point for my questions. And he's citing here in the first passage the Gospel of St. John, verses 11 to 17. And then the second passage he's citing is the Gospel of St. Luke, verses 36 to 44. So here we go with the first passage. But Mary stood without at the sepulchre weeping, and as she wept, she stooped down and looked into the sepulchre, and seeth two angels in white sitting, the one at the head and the other at the feet, where the body of Jesus had lain. And they say unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? She saith unto them, Because they have taken away my Lord, and I know not where they have laid him. And when she had thus said, she turned herself back, and saw Jesus standing, and knew not that it was Jesus. And Jesus saith unto her, Woman, why weepest thou? Whom seekest thou? She, supposing him to be the gardener, saith unto him, Sir, if thou hast borne him hence, tell me where thou hast laid him, and I will take him away. Jesus saith unto her, Mary. She turned herself, and saith unto him, Rabboni, which is to say, Master. Jesus saith unto her, Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father, but go to my brethren, and say unto them, I ascend unto my Father and your Father, and to my God and your God, unquote. And this now the passage from the Gospel of St. Luke. Quote, and as they thus spake, Jesus himself stood in the midst of them, and saith unto them, Peace be unto you. But they were terrified and affrighted, and supposed that they had seen a spirit. And he saith unto them, Why are ye troubled? Why do thoughts arise in your hearts? Behold my hands and feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for spirit hath not flesh and bones, as ye see me have. And when he had thus spoken, he showed them his hands and his feet. And while they yet believed not for joy, and wondered, he saith unto them, Have ye here any meat? And they gave unto him a piece of broiled fish and of a honeycomb. And he took it, and did eat before them. And he saith unto them, These are the words which I spake unto you while I was yet with you, that all things must be fulfilled, which were written in the law of Moses, and in the prophets, and in the Psalms, concerning me. Unquote. Now, questions. As I understand, these two events happened the same day, the one with Mary in the morning, and the other later in the afternoon. It appears to me that during those two events, he had ascended to his and our Father and God. How did he travel? And he puts this word in quotation marks. With the speed of thought or any other way. Where do you think heaven is, or the place and glory where the Father lives? Do you see it in another way than a place of glory? If so, how would you describe it? The resurrected body of Christ apparently had some special abilities. Yeah. Moving through our matter, a body of flesh and bones, able to eat mortal food, and so on. Do you think he still has that resurrected body? And if that is the case, where is he? How does the described resurrected state of Christ fit into the topological metaphor? A lot of questions there. I'm going to answer that question, Eric, in what I'm going to do is I'm going to play Advocatus Christi, in other words, advocate of Christ. I'm going to answer this in a traditional patristic way and leave aside questions of whether or not these things really happened. And then after doing the traditional answer, I am going to speculate a bit, all right? The traditional answer is, number one, heaven is where Christ himself is bodily, okay? And for the Catholic sacramental tradition, therefore, that means that heaven, in a certain sense, number one, is the church, and number two is the liturgical life of the church, which never stops, all right? Now, that may sound like a weird thing to say. We know that, okay, said Mass is at 8 o'clock on Sunday morning, High Mass is at 10, and so on and so forth. But that is not really what the formal teaching is. So let's go to that question. Do you still think he has that resurrected body? And if that is the case, where is he? The answer is yes, because that body is the mediating principle of Christ's role as high priest. In other words, there is a kind of, so to speak, heavenly mass that he is always offering at the right hand of the Father, which the earthly liturgies or rituals of the Mass enter into and participate in. Okay, that's why there's really not a stop to the liturgy, nor is the idea of the Mass being the sacrifice of Christ. You know, Protestants misunderstand that to mean that the Catholics are re-sacrificing Christ, which to the Protestants is, you know, blasphemy, rightly so, but that's not what the Catholics are actually saying. What they're saying is that the sacrifice is made eternally present by the wounds on Christ's body, which is why he's emphasizing this, touch them and feel them, because he's bearing that sacrifice eternally now in the body to the Father, okay? So it's an eternal kind of timeless, non-local, notice this words because now comes my speculation, non-local, spatially and temporally idea, okay? So it's a kind of extra dimensional thing, and hence we get into the topological metaphor. Now, obviously, if you read the Gospels, and if you're materialistically inclined or atheistically inclined, the story is a bunch of nonsense. But if you are inclined to look at these ancient texts and see in them hints of something genuine going on, then you would have to say this is a mighty peculiar body that he's got. It can be here and there. It can be physical and walk through other physical things, apparently. It is, in other words, what in the occult tradition might be called the astral body. All right. In other words, it has some mighty peculiar properties that are not part of our normal three-dimensional biological material existence. Okay. Now, personally, I don't find that so difficult to believe for two very different weird reasons. The first being, as we know, the Soviets, the Russians, back in the 50s, learned how to take Kirlian photography. In other words, they were taking photography of the electromagnetic aura, quite literally, that living creatures, be they plants, animals, bugs, humans, we all give off this electromagnetic imprint even after we have had limbs amputated. You can still find the electromagnetic signature of arms that aren't there, or of leaves that have been cut in half. The rest of the leaf is still present electromagnetically. So it's interesting that in the middle of, atheistic, officially materialistic Soviet Russia, you had these scientists doing this, and then occasionally under their breath, so to speak, and this is quite true, they would wonder under their breath if maybe this had something to do with all of these ancient religions, Christianity, Egyptian Osirianism, and so on, that kept talking about the resurrection of the body, which, coming from the Soviet Union, you gotta scratch your head a bit. The other thing that I think kind of plays into this is that if you look at the papers that Hal Puthoff wrote during and after the period that he was involved with the Stanford Research Institution's remote viewing project, he comes right out and says that for some reason that this ability appears to be a non-local ability. Humans have the ability to see things far distant with just their mind and far distant in time. So in other words, it's as if I can put words into Dr. Puthoff's mouth, which is always hazardous to do. If I can put words into his mouth, what he's suggesting is that there is a topological body. Okay? Hear me now. A topological body. A topologist would call it a topological region of set points that represent the self. Okay? That there's a topological body that is a non-local phenomenon to us, but that has a region of topological characteristics that are non-local and therefore extensive throughout the universe. Okay, that's a weird one. That's a paradox. Okay, so I don't have problems. I've never had problems with the resurrection story because there's too much of this weirdness in modern physics to discount it completely. And the way the Gospels present it in this glaringly, kind of surface level contradiction, if you take them both together and say, well, what does that mean? It means pretty much what we've been suggesting in a lot of our talks, that, humanity is not simply reducible to the corporeal, but at the same time, it can never be completely divorced from that, because you've got all of these weird feedback loops between the two. And there's actually a patristic Greek term for that weird set of feedback loops. It's called perichoresis. If you learn dogmatic theology, that's a word that you're going to learn and run into, because, you know, the Latin is the coincidenta idiomatorum. All right, that's the Latin term for the Greek perichoresis. And yes, it's basically what it's referring to is this weird set of feedback loops between these two very, very different topological regions, of which Christ is the center. How do I spell that? Is asking a cult fan. So guys, hang on here and let me transcribe this in the chat room. Perichoresis, the CH there representing the Greek letter he or X. So if you know Greek, get a hold of the LAMP Patristic Greek Lexicon and look up perichoresis. Anyway, very, very interesting question there, Eric, the Swede. And I doff my hat. I hope my answer made some sort of sense. Anyway, this one is on a completely different topic. This one is from Son of David. Let me see if Son of David is actually here in the chat room with us. Well, we have Casey in the chat room, so welcome to Casey, as in Edgar Casey. So you're new, Casey. Let us know what country you're from. That's the rule here. Let me refresh my chat room too here, guys, because I'm showing 37 on YouTube and 32 in the chat room, and for some reason, again, my chat room in the chat room area is not updating because I'm showing 37 there now as well. Xenophon, welcome to Xenophon in Germany, and to, let's see who else snuck in here. Nancy Farrar, welcome to Nancy. And Todd 6 Dot, I think I said hello to you before. P-Bud in Warsaw, and Argentum in the chat room, welcome to you. And Enrico, welcome to you. So all of you newbies that slithered in while I was talking and expostulating, welcome. All right. This one from Son of David, and again, some very interesting comments and questions. Why is China so quiet about their pyramids? I think they even have the tallest in the world, the Xi'an Pyramid, which is 1,000 feet. There they planted fast-growing trees on it to have it blend into the surroundings. Good question. My answer may be a little surprising here. The Chinese are, in my opinion, well aware of the Russian pyramid research. I have no evidence for this other than that this would have been something, in my opinion, that the Russians, when they were doing this back in the Soviet era, would have possibly approached the Chinese on, since they knew the Chinese had those pyramids way out in the Xinjiang province. And the Chinese, in turn, if you look at, and again, I'm kind of arguing here a circumstantial case here, but the Chinese, if you look at their physics thinking, the Chinese are unusual in that they are very engineering oriented in their physics, and yet they're very, very keenly capable of very avant-garde theoretical physics thinking, particularly if they think they can engineer it and do something with it, okay? So I'm thinking that the Chinese have probably had some sort of very black projects research on their pyramids for quite some time. Just as they have been researching, you see these occasional stories where the Chinese government will come out and say, well, such and such a special child was able to levitate a spoon. You know, they come out with these very strange paranormal stories every now and then, not very often, but every now and then. They kind of remind everybody, hey, we're working on this too. And that's the way it feels to me, is they're, you know, they're floating these balloons every now and then. Hey guys, you know, we're working on this too. Just a reminder, you know, that's kind of the way they're doing this. So why are they planting pyramids or planting trees on the pyramid? My suspicion here, son of David, and again, this is total speculation. I have no evidence for this. It's total speculation. I suspect that the reasons they're doing so is not because they want to conceal the pyramids and have people forget about them. I suspect what they're doing is an experiment. Okay? I suspect what they're doing is finding out if those pyramids will affect in some fashion the normal growth rate of those trees, or perhaps affect their productivity or fertility in some sense. So in other words, I'm looking at this very, very differently than most people. I think the Chinese are running experiments there of a very widespread, in-depth and in-breadth nature, if that makes any sense. So now let's get to question number 2. If some ancient technology can only be activated biometrically by DNA, then are you saying the inbred crazy elites in royal houses will be the only ones who control these possible planet-busting technologies? Good one. Doff my hat here, son of David, because I've been waiting for somebody to ask this, okay? I've been waiting for a long time. What happens when you inbreed too much? Well, we know all about the Habsburg jaw and how some of the Spanish Habsburgs were really kind of nutty. Because why? Well, they were marrying each other for a long time. All right. I suspect that these biometrically activated technologies, please hear me now, are technologies that can only be activated by clans or tribes, not necessarily a particular family, for precisely the reason that if you confine a genome or are looking for a particular genome, over time it will weaken. So in other words, I suspect that what they're looking for, please hear me now, because all of you need to latch onto this, that what they're looking for is not a family or a bloodline. That's how they themselves have interpreted it. I suspect, however, that there are a few of them who know that they cannot look for a bloodline, in other words, a very narrow population set. What they are looking for are haplogroups. Okay? That's why I spent so much time with haplogroups in Genes, Giants, Monsters, and Men. They're looking for haplogroups with the strongest presence, speculating again here, folks, with the strongest presence, number 1, of mitochondrial Eves, okay, and of mitochondrial Adam. Because remember what the ancient story is. One male of the gods and about 14 females of whatever human hominid they were used, according to the story, to engineer us in existence. So I think they're looking for, number 1, proof of the story, and if they find it, number 2, for whatever haplogroups on the planet right now have the strongest presence of those genetic markers. So in other words, got to think genetics here. It's not a bloodline. It's not a family. It may be a clan. It may be a tribe or haplogroups. Okay? If that makes sense. Now, I did not have time, son of David, to look at the mummified dinosaur fossil that you sent, but you went on to comment about it, and I want to, as much as I can comment about it, do so. And if you want to resubmit the link next time ahead of time so I have enough time to look at it, I will do so. All right. After citing this link, and it's www.nationalgeographic.com/magazine/06/dinosaur-fossil-discovery. All right. You say, to me, it looks like a dragon. And it got me thinking about chimeras, ancient lore, and the persistent rumors that dinosaurs never existed. I don't personally subscribe to the theory that dinosaurs never existed. That's good. I don't either. But there are a lot of aspects of paleontology that don't add up, and I do agree with that. For example, people started just discover dinosaurs in the 1800s, and from that point on, it became an explosion of findings from all over the world. Although the ancients did have lore about monsters, most of the skeletons in museums and exhibits are fakes. I don't know about that, but I'm going with your assertion here. As in, either they are jerry-rigged and pieced together from multiple sources, and in some cases, there are very little skeletons in exhibits with actual bones. I can believe that. Admittedly, from paleontologist insiders, there's a ton of guessing and science fiction in the industry. Or, in fact, that no outside and independent scientific community can examine the bones or any finding. Only the paleontology community can do so. It's called controlling information, folks. And he is right. There are a lot of indicators that there's a lot of fraud going on with the paleontology dinosaur mock-up community. However, I want to caution people, don't go down the Christian fundamentalist route. It's equally nutty. All right, here we go. In conclusion, the whole dinosaur industry might be a way to obscure chimeras or genetic engineering, or at least the real history. Maybe dinosaurs may not even be from Earth. Maybe they're from the exploded Jupiter-like planet where the giants have come from. After all, if a giant is 10 to 20 feet on average, their food source has to be that big or bigger. Any thoughts? I'm going to doff my hat on that one, son of David, because I think you're onto something here. I have been very, very disturbed about the paleontology industry, so to speak, and the way it came to conclusions that fit the evolutionary model. Indeed, the problem with evolution, as everybody knows, is we cannot find the so-called missing links. There's things that just suddenly pop up and appear in the record. Punctuated equilibrium, they're calling it now, which is an evolutionist way of saying, well, it just suddenly appeared, kind of like creationism without having to say the word creationism, you know. In other words, they're using language to cover up where they don't want to go. I think you might be on to something here. I would have to know more about the paleontology dinosaur skeleton making industry. There are a lot of assumptions in it. And if you don't believe me, go back and reread Michael Cremo and Richard Thompson's book, you know, Hidden Archaeology. There's a lot going on here. The problem I'm willing to entertain your idea as hypothesis. The problem is advancing that hypothesis to the status of a theory would require, number one, a lot of data, number two, um, a lot of careful philosophical argumentation. And as you say, getting access to the data is the problem. The paleontologists won't give you access to it. So yeah, it's a vicious circle, but I am willing to entertain it as a hypothesis. Great speculation there, I think. All right. Last one of the day, guys. Believe it or not, we are already done, which, hey, suits me just fine because I could use a real break today, and I'm going to save. Well, wait a minute here. Let me look at this. All right, we've got one more after this that just came in, but I could use an early vid chat today, folks, particularly with the severe weather in the area. I don't want to push my chances of having to run out during the middle of a vid chat, so let me print this last question off that came from Robert. I hope Robert will, in the future, give us his username. I don't like to give out actual names. All right, this one is from Katie B. Listen to this one, folks. This is a doozy of a question. He says, apologies for delay in getting back to you, but I went to Istanbul for a short holiday and to go see Ankara. Unfortunately, I got my arm trapped trying to help a disabled person out of their wheelchair at the airport. I yanked my arm out and it pulled it out of the socket. Excruciating pain, and it wouldn't stay in the socket, so I had to have surgery on it. It takes me weeks to come around properly after an anesthetic, plus I woke up with searing eye pain and hypothermia. So it's taken me a while to recover. To top it all off, 2 days after surgery was my move to Glastonbury the next day, so with my mind swimming, I've been moving and cleaning and having arguments with rubbish internet and furniture companies. Also, juggling 2 jobs. So this weekend, I have a friend coming to visit as we're going to Megalithomania in Glastonbury for a weekend of lectures. And I'm especially looking forward to Yusuf Iwan's Ancient Technology in Egypt lecture. Anyway, my point is that after the weekend, I have just about landed, have super fast broadband, works wonders if you email the CEO and threaten high court action after being left without internet for 3 weeks when I work from home, and have time to put together all of the data points I have amassed with regards to ancient 3D printing. I have a lot, and I'm not sure I'm so way out on the twig as to be ridiculous, but I'm going back to the Tower of Babel. Now, obviously, Katie, we all hope that you're better, that you're past the pain. Everybody try and remember Katie in your prayers or thoughts if you're not the praying sort. But anyway, she's going back to the Tower of Babel. I may also be able to draw a link between 3D printing and the carbon dating anomaly of the pinnacle of the pyramid. So I hope you have something by the end of next week. With that in mind, here's my vid chat question this week. Oh, I forgot, Katie, I didn't even read all of your email. I'm terribly sorry. I apologize. I just now noticed your last statement. With that in mind, here's my vid chat question for this week. In Hidden Finance, you point out the relationship between AI or supercomputing with occult ritual and the complex tapestry of dates, names, and coincidences woven into the fabric of reality that seems to surpass the human intellect, both in its complex web of occurrences, its mastery of time, and its necrophilious outlook, as only dead matter can, as opposed to the outlook of a living, breathing mammal that enjoys evoking a smile in its mate and enjoys the warmth of the sun on its back, and mostly trying to use its intellect to build things rather than to control and destroy. But I digress. It seems there are past occurrences that encompass a large volume of synchronicities surrounding heinous events, such as those parallels between Lincoln and Kennedy, and also those outlined in Walter Bosley's Empire of the Wheel. This suggests a certain antiquity to such supercomputing, and or a nod to the nature of reality. Now, folks, I think she's argued up to this point. She's set up that argument very well. Here comes the question. My question is there an ancient device, and I think you hint at this being the Great Pyramid, that has a consciousness that is orchestrating or hacking reality? And the question is someone hacking the consciousness that is hacking reality? Also, if you couple an AI to a 3D printer and warp drive, what do you get? Also, what is the connection here with crop circles and crop formations? You mentioned in saucers, swastikas, and psyops that crop formations may be an attempt to communicate ritualistically with something and or display technological capabilities. I cannot help but draw conclusions with the ritual and number behind mass events such as 9/11 and those incorporated into crop formations. A sickle with a curved blade was traditionally used to reap and harvest grain crops. The Grim Reaper. Death on the tarot card leading to the death of an old system and the ushering in of a new world order. The Druids used a sickle that is supposed to represent a swastika. A swastika may represent torsion technology used to cut crop circles. So I also add two types of black magicians into this mix. Or does this show two factions, one that uses crop circles as sacrifice grains, as in the more Quetzalcoatl coached impetus, and one that uses people? In other words, hey, I've never heard that. Katie, again, doff my hat. I think you may be onto something there with the idea of crop circles as sacrifice, grain sacrifice. Very interesting. Very interesting. What is going on here? As I'm seeing sacrifice as one of the dominant themes snaking its way through this. All right. The basic question here is there possibly an ancient AI computer technology perhaps guiding mankind? And she references the Great Pyramid. All right. The first thing, Katie, I think we have to do, and you also referenced the Tower of Babel. Okay. I'm going to speculate here, and I'm going to reveal some other thoughts that I've had for quite some time that I have never put down in a book. Number one, if you look at the Great Pyramid itself and understand it to be a machine, and leaving aside for the moment my weapons hypothesis, what kind of machine is it? Well, it's first of all an analog computer. Why? Because it's embodying, as analog computers do, physically embodies to scale measurements of a wider analogical system. Okay? Think of the old fire control computers on, big battleships that are firing their guns, 10 to 20 miles at a moving target that's just a little speck over there on the horizon. How did they do all that? How did they get anything to hit those things at all? Well, they used analog, big clunky analog mechanical computers that were down in the belly of the ship. All right. And those analog computers, believe it or not, were tremendously accurate, especially given the fact that they're analog. Okay. Um, so number one, you have a robust analogical computing system. Number two, if you expand that now to the grid of the gods hypothesis, that somebody in the world is building all of this megalithic structure all over the world at key locations, what do you have? Well, you have the earth is being made into a machine, or being made as the power plant for a planetary wide dispersed analogical machine. Okay? So in other words, the earth appears to me, Katie, to be one contender, not the only, but on this view, to be one contender for what? For the Tower of Babel. Let me repeat that. The earth appears to be one contender for the Tower of Babel. Why? Because, again, the biblical record says they're building this tower which can what? Reach to heaven. And if they complete it, they will be able to do whatsoever consciousness they imagine to do. Okay? Now, if that be the case, then it's also a broken machine. Broken, incidentally, that the cosmic war broke the entire machine. But as a broken machine, it still has a kind of vestigial effect. Okay? So as a broken machine, it's a kind of amplifier. Okay? A consciousness amplifier. Because of that analog link. Now, there's a lot more to it than I care to talk about now, but I do think, Katie, that you are, again, on to something. So, big doff of the hat. All right, now, the last question of the day, this one came from Robert. He didn't put down his username, so I'm assuming that Robert is here in the chat room. I don't know. Let me go ahead and refresh my my user list here, guys, just very quickly, because I think Robert is, I'm not seeing, okay. In the future, Robert, let us know your username so that we make sure to really bring it to your attention. Anyway, this one's going out to Robert. He says, quote, Steve Bannon is potentially on the outs with Trump. Of all the people on his team, Steve Bannon has confused me the most. The line that he was there to bring Team Trump access to the alternative media was, I felt, a shallow excuse. The only people it really fooled are those anchoring the desks at the dying propaganda outlets. His background is Goldman Sachs Reed Pirate. Either he had tons of cash handy or he had access to it. Most business at that level is done through personal relations, and I have a little information of who Bannon has shared a drink with, or two, or a case. Andrew Breitbart died the night before he promised to reveal things about the Obama regime that would bring it down. Tragic, yet very timely coincidence for the Obama regime. No, I would say at least grand jury material. If Breitbart did have something, if he did have some goods on the Obama, meaning what would it that would bring that regime down? Breitbart is also on record of saying that Podesta is a world-class pedophile. How defending unspeakable dregs escapes me. Bannon buys Breitbart News. Anthony Weiner then gets nabbed for being incredibly stupid. It's one thing to screw around with someone else's wife when you're married, but this guy is weaponized autism in what he does with underage females. So here's the question. Is the set of files on pedophiles, no pun here, the same as the set of pederasts in the insurance file from Wiener's laptop? Thoughts. Show your work. Is the set of files from Breitbart now in the hands of Goldman Sachs? Rudy Giuliani is sitting on top of the insurance files as the Trump administration's internet czar, so they're safe. I can't tell you how much I'm laughing at that appointment. Epitome of enemies closer than your friends. Do you think Bannon tried to get the insurance files over to Goldman? Ah, gotcha. All right. In a nutshell, Robert, here's what I think. Number one, the pedophile, sex slavery, child trafficking ring, or human trafficking, you know, it's not limited just to children. It's a global phenomenon. It's organized, but it has no center. Follow me? So in other words, like all organizations, there's going to be an organizational archive. But since that organization is not centered, it's not going to have a central archive. What it's going to have are several sort of regional archives in the hands of the capos, so to speak. And those regional archives are at certain points going, by necessity of the case, going to overlap. In other words, the names, the connections, the personnel, who has been abducted and sold, and so on and so forth, those are all going to overlap to a certain degree, but I don't think you're going to have one all-encompassing file at the root of this. So in other words, I don't think you need to assume that Anthony Weiner's file is behind Rudy Giuliani's, or that the file that he has is behind that of John Podesta. They may all have different files that are part of the same non-centralized network. That's what I think is really going on here. That we're dealing with a kind of polycentric phenomenon rather than a unicentric phenomenon. And as a result, the files are always going to be different, which is, you know, convenient for them because it gives them a certain degree of security that you can't roll up the whole network. And again, that's by design. So anyway, folks, that is it for today's VidChat. Believe it or not, we did it in actually under 2 hours, and my voice thanks you. So, you know, I'm going to stick around here for just a few minutes. I'll have a pipe, which I packed much earlier and just forgot to smoke. And then I'm going to call it an early evening. I've got a long weekend of blogging and got to eat supper and do some stuff tonight. But thank you. Those were excellent questions this time around. And a cult fan, pardon me, said, my voice is tired and it's hurting a bit, but it's okay. A cult fan says he has a Twin Peaks question coming. Anyway, let me light this. Anyway, yeah, I'm in agreement with Busy Dealer. That was fun. That was a fun one. Definitely a fun one. Anyway, just want to check. If I missed anybody's VidChat questions, I apologize. Resubmit them. I don't think I have, but if I did, just resubmit them for next time. But this was a good one, guys. A very good one. Very enjoyable questions all over the board. Let me check my weather too, guys, and make sure I haven't missed any storm alerts or anything like that. I appear to be out of it for the moment. Not mentally, guys. Anyway, a cult fan says, my question is, how does the process of possession occur, since it is a human generationally recognized situation? It can be, yeah. How does it work? Well, my answer is kind of twofold, occult fan. The traditional answer is that people that have those family types of possession things, that they have at some point been initiated, usually at very young ages, sometimes later, into the whole thing. So in other words, the traditional explanation is you have to be initiated and brought into it. I suspect that in addition to that method, that there is possibly a genetic explanation. The whole thing, by the whole thing, I simply mean occult initiation. In some cases accompanied by childhood abuse of sexual and or emotional nature, having been made to be witnesses in many cases to animal or human sacrifices, or participate in them, things of that nature. I'm being evasive because, you know, I don't like talking about some of those things. They're so grisly. But you can kind of, if you read the books on the Franklin scandal, you'll get statements from the people that were involved. Paul, I forget what his name is, has an Italian last name. Paul Benucci or something like that. But anyway, they cover some of that in their allegations. But that's the so-called traditional method. Malachi Martin, Bonatti, thank you, Paul Bonatti. Malachi Martin talked about it on rare occasions, very briefly, on Art Bell as well. This idea of family initiated. Freefall says, do they then have control over the soul as well? Well, depending on what you mean by the soul, most people, as I've said, Freefall, you've got to get out of the Western habit of mind of treating soul as the equivalent of person. Soul is a property of nature. The person is your absolute irreducible uniqueness, all right? In other words, you as an individual, Freefall, instantiate not only the physical human nature, but the spiritual human nature, aka the soul, in an absolutely unique way, all right? So even though the nature is common, there are always and only individual instantiations of it. Now, with that distinction in mind, Freefall, I think you can say that they will have a degree of influence or control or manipulability over the soul as distinct from the person. But that means that they can never completely be sure of that control. There's always something in the person that lies outside of anything natural. All right. In other words, I've said it before, and this is why this distinction is so crucial. Personhood is not the sum total of your mind, memories, emotions, will, habits, actions. Follow me? You yourself lie outside of all of those things. They are personal to you, but they are personal to you in that they come through the common human nature. But you cannot be reduced to them. And therefore, if you take that as a, and folks, I'll be very blunt, it's a distinction of Christian theology, all right? No theological system makes that distinction as clearly in its metaphysic as does Christianity. Because of that, possession as a phenomenon can only go so far in its control over the individual person, because ultimately it cannot control the individual person. That's the problem. It can certainly greatly influence, but never completely control, because all of that natural uniqueness does not sum up to the person who you are. Okay? Hope that makes sense. Anyway, good question. Finish my pipe here with you guys. And got a letter or an email from my sister. She says, going home, love the weekends, book club tonight, Saturday going to a wedding, Sunday going to the symphony, Monday start over, hope you are okay, love mom. That's my sister. Anyway. Amakephaleosis, Yahweh Adam is pyramid trilithian stargate. Interesting idea. Interesting idea. Paging Dr. Freud, says a cult fan. Xenophon says the new biology talks about templates, which explain instincts, but can also explain how people join groups. Is there a template for possession? Yes. I just mentioned what it is. It's a family. For some of these groups, it's a family tradition that's passed down generation to generation. And I'm glad I'm not a member of any of those families. Anyway, good questions today, guys. Very good questions. Freefall says, hey, Doc, what does your sister think of your work? Does she realize who you really are? I don't think up until in fact, I don't think up until the Louisville weekend, last weekend, that she really had, she knew I wrote books and that, people read my books. But I don't think she had really an idea of what I was doing and why people were reading them. I think it came home to her in a major way this last weekend. So she, I think she changed a bit in her perception. Maybe not completely, but in her perception. So now she says, a haplogroup, a busy dealer, is a genetic group of a very large genetic group that displays certain common features in their genome. So in other words, the European Caucasian population has about 7 different haplogroups. Haplogroups are determined in large part by the genome of mitochondrial, in other words, the female mother's mitochondrial DNA that we all carry. No, my sister has not read my books. She finds them too difficult. But anyway, she knows I write books, but she finds them very difficult. But I think she was aware from the other people at Louisville and the discussions that we're having that there's, you know, she's thought the same thing, that there's something wrong in the world and the political, you know, explanations there too. Anyway. But that said, folks, Schwarzenstein just emailed or messaged me and says it's in the book of Enoch, chapters 6 through 11. And my question is, what's in the book of Enoch? I know there's lots. What's the what that we're talking about? My sister was kind of like me, a reluctant Trump supporter. Certainly not a fan of Darth Hillary. Definitely not a fan of Darth Hillary. But anyway. Love this tobacco, guys. This is really good tobacco. It's an aromatic blend. I don't smoke English blends. The Shemihaza and Azazel narrative. Okay. I don't know what the context of all of this is. I'm assuming that you're talking in reference to occult tradition being handed down in families. This blend is from a tobacconist in Alamogordo, New Mexico. I don't even remember the name, occult fan, of the tobacconist. The name of the blend is called Amos and Andy. And it's a dark, it's a black Cavendish with a little light Cavendish and a little Burley. And it's a very nice smoke, a very cool smoke. Have I studied that narrative? I probably have, but I can't remember anything about it specifically right off the top of my head. It may just glow in the dark. It doesn't glow in the dark. At least not that I've noticed. Yeah, I remember that passage, giving the arts, occult arts, to humanity. I do remember that passage. But I wouldn't read too much into that, as many fundamentalists do. But anyway, this is my daily bowl, by the way, folks. So I'm having my daily bowl with you. All right, folks, it's 4 o'clock, and I think I'm going to sign off. I may be back on much later in the evening tonight, just to say hello to anybody that's still kind of lurking in the chat room. But anyway, I will see you all. Thank you for some really great and provocative questions, and I'll see everybody in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.